A brand new Premier League season is upon us, and with that is the return of Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast. Adrian Clarke is back as ever. Why wouldn't he be? He's here. Arsenal are going to win the league. It's great. Mark O'Hare, as ever, has enjoyed his summer off ahead of 9.5 months of going to be pretty intense stuff. Mark, good to see you. And a very special guest today, Miguel Delaney from The Independent. Good morning, Miguel. Welcome on board.
Morning, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. You know what, guys? We could do the whole chit chat and see how your summers were, but I've been chatting to most of you anyway, so let's not do that. Let's just dive in because we've got a big show today. We're going to cover some of the Premier League outrights. We're also going to do 4 of the marquee opening weekend fixtures. I want to take a look at the outright betting for the Premier League, if we can get the producer to bring it up on screen as we have it. And Miguel, I'm going to start with you because this is a pretty simple one for you. They won it last year. Manchester City currently at 1.78. Believe it or not, they've actually been drifting the last couple of days. They win it for you, right?
Yeah, although I'm not surprised they've been drifting because I do have them as my winners, but maybe not with the confidence I'd have in other years, just because I think the World Cup is going to distort and disrupt so much. I mean, yeah, this is basically it. If it was a normal season, you would have City as winners, but it's not quite a normal season. It's one where the first few months, I think a lot of players will be, even if subconscious, thinking about the World Cup. Those who aren't picked will be obviously have to experience the disappointment of that mid-season. And then after the World Cup, well, I suppose you only have to look, say, at Harry Kane's slow start to last season, Harry Maguire's ongoing struggles. So I think it's going to have a profound effect. That said, I think there's now going to be a huge advantage for players who don't go, and 2 of those are Salah and Erling Haaland. So even if Haaland gets off to the slow start that a lot of people are suddenly anticipating after the Community Shield, I do think that period could be crucial. And City just, I think, force of numbers will end up overcoming even those disruptions. But maybe it could make it for a bit more of a kind of helter-skelter season, maybe more than people might usually have expected, which is why I'm not surprised that the price has drifted a little bit.
Mark, Liverpool at 3.6. We saw the prices on the screen there. I mean, look, if we combine Manchester City and Liverpool's odds, it's about a 1.18 shot, which is an 85% probability. That's right, Mark, isn't it? I mean, if I could only give you 7 to 1 on the rest of the teams, you wouldn't really take it. You want double digits, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of interest in Tottenham. Well, there was at the start of the summer when they did a lot of early business too, but I think it's still a huge gap to close. And as much as I'm a big fan of Antonio Conte and his teams tend to sort of be at their best after a full pre-season in their second campaign, it's still a big gap to close. That the standards that those 2 teams have been setting over the last 5 seasons is ridiculous, really. But I think with my head, I expect Man City to win. But if I'm having a bet, I prefer to back Liverpool at the prices. Just because, there's no doubt City deserve to be favourites. They've been the most dominant and the best team in the last 5 years, averaging 92 points and 97 goals a season in that sequence, and chucking Haaland into the mix. And it's pretty scary, really. But over the last 4 campaigns, City have earned 358 Premier League points. Liverpool have earned 357. So there's 1 point difference between them over a long sample there. And in 2 of those years, when City did win the title, it was by 1 point. So, would I want to back them at odds on in a weird year where there's a World Cup kind of in the middle? Not really. And also just, I don't want to sort of doubt Pep Guardiola and his forward planning, but it does surprise me that, they've let go Zinchenko, Sterling, Gabriel Jesus. There's talk that Bernardo Silva's now being wanted by Barcelona again and again. City's squad isn't as strong or deep as you probably might expect. Compare it with Liverpool's. Liverpool have a better squad than Man City. I'd just say City probably have the better first 11. So, yeah, that might make a difference. So, for me, if I'm a backer, I'll be backing Liverpool at 3.6 over City at odds on.
Yeah, I don't think you're in agreement on that one.
I am, yeah. If they were priced up the same, if they were both priced at, something around even money, I would probably lean towards Manchester City. I think they've just got the edge. But when I see the disparity in the prices, I've got no real interest in tipping up Manchester City at this time. I think Liverpool provide great value. They did only lose the title by 1 point last season. I think people are forgetting as well how well Liverpool finished the previous campaign. They were quite a way behind, and they just went on this incredible unbeaten run. I mean, they were the best team on the planet, weren't they, for the second half of the season? Okay, they struggled a little bit in the cup finals, but yeah, they were awesome, and I think a little bit of a refresh at the top of the field. Obviously, losing Mane is not great, but Darwin Núñez offers them something different. Definite, I think, upgrade in terms of a goal threat at centre forward instead of Firmino. So, yeah, I'm excited about Liverpool's prospects. I think they've got as much chance as City of landing the title. I think you can forget the rest. The average across the last 6 seasons, the average title winners are 94.8 points. I mean, Spurs aren't getting there. Chelsea aren't getting there. It's not happening. It'll be one of those two.
The one thing I would say about that, though, is, I mean, so basically, for the last 5 years, they've both been such known quantities. City played the way they do under Guardiola. Liverpool, with that front three, played the way they do in the club. Whereas this season, with the ructions of the World Cup, it's basically, it's the first time, not that there's uncertainty about them, but there are elements we don't know. Guardiola has basically undertaken the overhaul that he's wanted for at least 2 seasons. Because, I mean, loads of those players, Sterling, Mahrez, Bernardo Silva, they were actually on the market last year, but they had no takers because they wanted to make changes then. And Liverpool, okay, it's only one change, and that is Darwin Núñez. But I think that has quite a strong psychological effect, given that that front three of Salah, Mane, and Firmino was together for so long. And even though Firmino had been slipping out of the team, for one of them to actually be leaving and be replaced, I do think it considerably changes the dynamic. So it's the one kind of point of caution on having that they're just suddenly, there are some unknowns about the two teams now. Whereas I think Adrian's right. It's going to take, I wouldn't completely rule Tottenham out just because the nature of the season's going to be, but an awful lot has to fall their way. The one thing I would say, though, I mean, it feels like it's the closest we're talking about in terms of, I remember in a press conference actually in Euro 2016, where I covered Italy a fair bit at that tournament, and then covered Chelsea a lot the following season. And Conte talked about his ideal being creating a small war machine. And that feels like it's pretty much what he's got now at Tottenham. Because it feels almost like a bit of a classic Mourinho summer when Mourinho's at the top of his game, and that Conte has forensically gone after the positions he needed. And Perisic is, in particular, an inspired signing. But as you say, it's even if there's a drop-off in the top 2, there would need to be a significant leap from Tottenham, which is possibly beyond them.
Yeah, no, it's a good, valid point. It's definitely a team that looks like a Conte type team. Perisic, Inter loaned him out to Bayern, thinking that he couldn't do the job of left wing back. Then he comes back and he's a different player. What I want to touch on next, guys, I want to have a quick look at the top 4, the top 6, the relegation betting, the top goal scorer. We won't spend too long on this because you could go down a tunnel on this or down a hole and we'll never come back out of it. So we just bring it up on screen so you can back all these markets, obviously, at matchbook.com currently. The top 4 markets. I'm not totally sure if we can see it there yet, but let's have a look at what we have so far. Obviously, look, top 4, Spurs are going to be nailed on for that. Arsenal are 2.58 for top 4. So let me take that one, Adrian, with Arsenal. I mean, look, obviously Chelsea are still favoured ahead of Arsenal for the top 4. But you fancy them to actually get the job done this year and not bury it down the stretch like they did last year?
I mean, they did. Yeah, they blew it, didn't they? Big time. They should have earned top 4. They weren't far away at all. If they'd have had a better goal scorer at the top end of the pitch, they'd be in the Champions League right now. I've got no doubt about that. So I look at the price difference between Arsenal and Spurs and Chelsea. You know, heavily odds on Spurs and Chelsea. I'm not as confident. I agree with the guys. I think Spurs
Champions League to AC,
Spurs look in good shape. They look in good shape. They've recruited very well. I would probably have them in my top 4. I probably would, but at 1.66, I'm not hugely confident. Chelsea, there's a lot of change going on there, and more change to come, I think, in the coming weeks. Again, very, very short. Whereas Arsenal 2.58, I think that's a very good price on a team that narrowly missed out and that has strengthened this summer considerably, in my opinion, particularly in that key position with Gabriel Jesus. They need a couple more. I think they need a central midfielder and another striker. If they get those, then I'd be quite bullish on Arsenal's prospects. The pre-season couldn't have gone any better. And I think there's a good mood there at the moment. Everyone's sort of engaged with the team and the manager. Let's hope all or nothing doesn't derail that in the next few weeks. But yeah, the mood is good. And I think they're in with as much of a shout as Chelsea and Spurs of top four. United, I'm on a watching brief with them. I want to see how they fare in the first few weeks.
Mark, I'll come to you for a second. We'll double back very quickly on top goal scorers in a minute, but looking at the relegation battle, I mean, like Bournemouth are pretty much with zero signings of any note during the summer. They're pretty, odds on at 1.5 to go down. But as one of the bigger price you're liking, I think it's about 6.9 currently, just under 6 to 1, is Wolves, Mark.
Ooh.
Interesting one.
Yeah, look, I put my 1 to 20 up on Twitter last week, and Wolves fans really sort of came for me about this. I had them on my bottom three. I appreciate it as a bit of a wild card, and I know they're a big price, but last season Everton went into the season as 25 to 1 shots to be relegated, and very nearly went down. So there is precedent here that teams can drop off, and I don't think the margin is that significant from sort of lower mid-table towards the bottom three, really. I do think the middle of the pack has increased in quality this summer and this season. So I do think it'll be difficult for a team like Wolves to sustain themselves or at least progress. They finished 10th last season. But if you look at their campaign, they were completely indebted to their goalkeeper, Jose Sarr, who posts some outrageous post-shot XG numbers. That's basically a measurement that shows how reliable goalkeepers were at saving goal-bound shots, and he effectively saved Wolves 9 goals, and he also led the league for save percentages as well. Going forward, they're pretty wretched as well. Only the bottom three scored fewer goals. They've averaged fewer than 1 goal now across the last 2 campaigns. Raul Jimenez was their top goal scorer last season with 6. He's now injured to the start of the season. I think Juan's picked up an injury in pre-season as well. I know Pedro Neto is back, and that's a big, big plus. But they fired in the fewest shots on target and had the worst XG difference of the teams to stay up. So there's plenty of sort of signs to suggest that they overperformed last season and overachieved. So it wouldn't take a huge amount of regression for them to slip back into trouble. I thought they were really flat from February. The defence started to falter. The attack wilted. Bottom three process for the last 24 games. And also I kind of look around to the competition around them, and I'm not convinced still with the coaching at Wolves compared to probably others. I think someone else has got Southampton on the list, but for example, I'm just using Saints, but I have full belief in Ralph Hasenhüttl. I don't have full belief in Bruno Lage to turn what was quite a miserable end to last season around.
The one thing on that is there's a few murmurs about ructions at Southampton, which is kind of a long-running thing given investment. And I'd have some doubts over whether Hasenhüttl is going to last the season, not necessarily because he is sacked, which is why...
Miguel, I got to ask, what you make of those signings? I mean, like it just has this overtures of a Red Bull kind of thing, and that's grand in the the Bundesliga and the Austrian League and the MLS, but I was just looking at those guys coming in. I was like, this is a big step up for a lot of those guys. Well,
Southampton have been actually trying this, but I mean, not they were kind of Leipzig before Leipzig or Salzburg before Salzburg, but they had essentially been kind of one of the first clubs in England certainly to try that approach. But one of the, especially in a league like England where there are, I suppose, more glass ceilings throughout the division, it always gets to a point where diminishing returns, and it feels like Southampton are at that point and have been actually for 1 or 2 years, where there's only so long you can go where you sell players with profit, and then you hit this kind of plateau. And actually, Leicester are beginning to find that potentially what could be a bit of a landmark season for them. Yeah. But it's just, it's why I just have a lot of doubts about Southampton.
Yeah. Mark, I cut across you there. Sorry, Mark. John, I'll come back to you in a second, but Mark, I cut across you there when Miguel was chatting.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And I think that's Saints' biggest problem is potentially trying to keep hold of Ralph Hasenhüttl and keep him happy. All I was going to say is if I was anyone of note at Everton, I'd be getting rid of Frank Lampard right now and looking at someone like Ralph Hasenhüttl. And I think that's a potential. There's a coach there who could do a lot better with a better club. So Saints need to sort of look after him because he's an asset.
I agree, I do, and he's had some absolute tonkings, hasn't he, down the years? I mean, he's had some terrible nights, Hasenhüttl, but I rate him. I think he's a very, very good coach. But I look at the squad, and it's a squad that's going to struggle, I think, this season at Southampton. I would say the same for Everton. I would give Everton's survival prospects a huge boost if they had Hasenhüttl instead of Lampard, who I don't think has really made any difference to them. They've looked pretty poor in pre-season. I know a bit Kiev the other day, but on the American trip they were awful. The bits that I saw of them. One other name I want to chuck in because there are a lot of obvious names. Bournemouth, obviously one of them, but Leeds. I think are quite backable at 3.35. They have lost their two best players. Calvin Phillips, the heartbeat of the team, gone. And Rafinha, the guy that dug them out of hole after hole, scored goals that made a huge difference for them, gone. And they've signed a number of players that Jesse Marsch knows. But they're all Premier League rookies. We don't know how they'll adapt to English football. And I think the jury's still out on Jesse Marsch as well. And he's a great communicator. I like the things he says, but just don't know. I'm not completely sold on Jesse Marsch yet. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think Leeds can consider themselves, safe this season.
Yeah, look, we put the price up on screen there, but if you're listening to us on the podcast, now Leeds 3.35 to be relegated, Southampton 4.0, and Everton 4.6. All right, top goal score before we get onto this weekend's games. We're looking at the betting currently. Erling Haaland is 3.95. That's drifted, and you know what? It drifted on the back of that Charity Shield performance. One swallow doesn't make the summer. But Miguel, kick it off here for me. Mo Salah here at 5.9. If any player, like you touched on earlier, if any player needed a 5-week break in the middle of the season, going off what he's done the last couple of seasons, it is Salah.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's an advantage on top of course. It's just his. I don't even want to say how he knows the league, but just how he's dominated the league. Whereas with Haaland, who's the obvious other choice, again, I think it's about unknowns, and we should. And okay, there's no doubt about Haaland's talent. But there are a few variables here in the sense that he has to adapt to Pep Guardiola, and because with Guardiola, it's almost never a case of he just buys a player and slots him in, and that's that. There's already some murmurs from kind of the training camp and that Guardiola wants him to press more, which is going to involve a change there. Secondly, though, I think there's the nature of the Premier League, and this isn't even just about the kind of the quality difference between the Bundesliga and England. It's also style. Whereas the Bundesliga is such a high pressing league, which leaves high lines that Haaland's pace can specifically exploit, and he can build up speed. And if you look, I did a piece last year looking through his goals, and so many came from that. Whereas in England, and with the way City hold the ball, he's going to play a lot more low blocks. There's a lot more space to run into, and that's something else he's going to have to adapt to. So while I do think he will score a lot of goals, I just think it's why it's those knowns are why Salah would be my bet.
And Adrian, look, they're great points that Miguel makes for Haaland, but City will just create so many chances anyway. Like we've seen in the last couple of seasons with the false nine, and they've still converted them. So you put someone in there who's just a great finisher, and you fancy him even at that price, just under 3-1.
I do. I mean, the Golden Boot's been won with 22 or 23 goals in the last few seasons. There's one exception, I think, where it went to 32. And so, I mean, that's a very achievable target for someone like Erling Haaland in a Manchester City team. I accept those points. The style change. A lot of players take a season to get used to Pep Guardiola, don't they? But I think they'll change their style a little bit to suit him. They'll find ways to get him in. And he doesn't just score goals running in behind. I think that's where those are the eye catchers. But he's also a proper centre forward, a goal muncher that sniffs out chances inside the 6-yard box with either foot or his head. So I just think the quantity of chances that City create, having someone in there like him, I just can't see him not scoring 25 goals. Maybe that's just, maybe I'm living in cloud cuckoo land. I don't know. But that's just my vision of how things will work out, even if they are a work in progress. So I'll have to wait and see. I personally think Kane over Salah as an alternative option. If Spurs are going to have a great season, I'm sure Kane will be, a huge part of that. He's 28 now. This is probably, peak territory for strikers. They normally sort of tail off towards 29, 30 and beyond. So I think he could have a very good season. But yeah, my money would be on Haaland just because of his record. He scores a goal a game, and in this City team, I think he could score a goal a game. I really do.
Yeah, and we look for alternative, like Adrian said, Kane can be back 7.0, and Darwin Núñez, we've seen a lot of warm money in the last couple of days, 13.5. Mark, very quickly wrap it up here for us. You fancy Salah in this market?
Yeah, it's pretty dull, really. Two trends against Haaland. No Man City players won the award under Pep Guardiola, and De Bruyne top scored with 15 last season. And no foreign players ever won the Golden Boot in their debut season in the Premier League either. So just a couple of trends to be aware of. But yeah, just at the prices, to me, it was Salah or Kane. They've topped the charts in 6 of the last 7 seasons. My preference would be Salah, sole winner or joint winner in 3 of the last 5, a goal off it last year. 5-1, I think it's a very reasonable price considering he's not at the World Cup, and Kane could come back with some baggage, either positive or negative, from the World Cup. And look, Salah, he's always fit. His record of actually his Premier League appearances through the years is really, really strong. He's on penalties, signed a new deal recently, averaging 24 goals a season in the Premier League, which is outrageous, really. So I think 5-1 he'll be there or thereabouts.
All right, there's a lot we didn't get through there because we're probably caught for time for the other games, but you check out insights.matchbook.com from Wednesday afternoon. I'll put all of the guys' selections there for the top 4, top 6, relegation, outright, and top goal scorer. We'll move on, guys. We're going to cover 4 Premier League games. Before we do that, if you don't have a Matchbook account, you do want to get involved on some of those markets, we have a pretty decent sign-up offer available at matchbook.com. It's a £30 welcome offer. Use the bonus code INSIGHTS30 when signing up, and that's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. And use the bonus code INSIGHTS30. Full T's and C's of that offer can be found at insights.matchbook.com. Just Google search Matchbook Insights. All of the guys' selections will be up there throughout the season. And Adrian has extra Premier League tips, and Mark will have his European selections in the coming weeks as well. If you're new to the show, we're going to cover 4 marquee games here, and then we're going to do best bets. There might be an EFL selection and European selection as well. We're going to start Friday night in South London, Crystal Palace against Arsenal. Let's take a look at the betting. Adrian, I'll come to you first on this one, but first of all, we'll take a look at the betting. As I said, Palace, you can back at 4.6. Arsenal have been on the drift in the last day or two. They're almost up to 1.9 now with 1.89. The draw available at 3.9. Palace getting a half a goal start on the main Asian handicap line. That keeps the draw on side as well. At odds against 2.1 and 2.5 is the total, ever so slightly shaded towards the under. Adrian, I touched on it there a few minutes back. Some good signings for Arsenal during the summer. We're obviously going to get more insights on them on Prime in the next couple of weeks as well. Palace have been a bogey team for them in the last year or two. And this Palace team, a lot of good things going on there right now. It's a tough start for Arsenal.
It's a challenging game, yeah, no doubt about it. As good as Arsenal have been in pre-season, as buoyant as they are, as brilliant as Gabriel Jesus has been, this is a team that gets under the skin of Arsenal. We saw that last season, home and away. Arsenal scraped a lucky draw at Emirates and were just hammered at Selhurst Park. It was 3-0. They were bullied, physically dominated really by Palace, who set about basically unsettling them with a ferocious press. And I think they'll try and do the same thing again. Why wouldn't you if you were Patrick Vieira? So it's a real toughie. Arsenal they've got to be on it from minute one and make sure that they sort of kill the atmosphere at Selhurst Park. I do think Palace on the handicap are an attractive option because it would not surprise me if this was a score draw, or if Arsenal were to win, it'd be a very narrow victory. Don't envisage any kind of thrashing here. I'm looking at the goals market because Arsenal have been full of them in pre-season. In the matches played in front of fans, they got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 against Sevilla. I was there for that one. It was pretty impressive. Palace, I looked at their results, full of goals as well. They've got a number of forwards that they're sort of up their sleeve, haven't they? That are capable of scoring goals in the Premier League, and they'll take confidence from beating Arsenal last season. So I was looking at both teams to score, and I think it's quite a decent price, really. 1.86. Arsenal go in with a new look defence. Saliba's been great in pre-season. He looks excellent as a partner to Gabriel, but they're using Ben White at right back, and Zinchenko's new, obviously, in at left back. And I think White is the sort of weak link here. He's somebody that's a little bit of a fish out of water in that position. He could be got at. So I could see Palace scoring. I think Arsenal will probably win the game, but they might take a score draw here, given the recent history. So yeah, both teams to score would be my selection.
Mark, an agreement on this one?
Very much so. It's both bets basically penciled in, really. Both teams to score, and I also like the look of Palace plus +3/4 on the Asian handicap at 1.84. It just means if Arsenal win by 1, we only lose half of our stake, really. But a draw or a home win sees you paid out at the prices. And I know a lot of people will look back to what Arsenal did at the start of last season at Brentford. Different kettle of fish here because Arteta had a scratch squad together for that time around. But this is still a very, very tricky opening game. And as an Arsenal fan, it would make me feel wheezy, actually. So, they're excellent in pre-season, but, this is the big time now. And their record as odds-on favourites away from home under Arteta is very strong, 8 wins from 11. And there's always a big but when it comes to Arsenal. They did lose 5 times the bottom half teams last season, including that pummelling at Palace. And they went off at 2.07 that day before a 3-0 defeat. And that was only in April. So I don't see how or why Arsenal deserve to be odds-on favourites here. I know they've strengthened significantly. Palace have lost Gallagher, but they have signed very well into Decore from Lens last season, who was great. Eze's back fit and available. Adrian mentioned the attack, but you've got creativity, invention in Elise, Zaha, Mateta and Edouard up front are lively enough. So this is a team who ranked 6th in terms of XG process last season, 1 place below Arsenal, yet Arsenal going off as odds-on favourites. And Palace only were a bigger price at Selhurst Park 3 times last season. They held Man City here. They beat Arsenal. They beat Spurs. They beat United. Chelsea only won by a single goal. So we know Selhurst is traditionally a tough place to go. And I think on the opening day, possibly more so. So, if Adrian's going BTTS, I'll just take the +3/4 on the Asian handicap as an option.
All right, BTTS I know is 1.88. And you can back the 3/4 goal on the Asian handicap as well. Miguel, you fancy Arsenal here, but as Mark touched on it, odds on, it's a bit skimpy. So you're thinking there's going to be a few goals. You paired it up over 2.5. You fancy the Gunners here, anyway? Yeah,
well, I do. I mean, I do think it'll be a high-scoring game, but I fancy Arsenal for more of those goals. Partly because I don't have any doubts about Palace this season. I think it'll be fine, but I do think there'll be an adjustment period just for the fact that for anyone you talked around the squad, Conor Gallagher was so crucial to the way they work. And I mean, one of the discussions going into the summer was that it's not really about replacing Gallagher. I mean, the way he works means that you always need to bring in 2 players and reshape the midfield. And I think there will be a bit of an adjustment to that, which could just maybe stop Palace doing what they did to Arsenal last season, or just kind of cause a little bit of a kind of a reshuffle in the team that they need to respond to. Again, I have no doubts about Palace in the long term. They'll be absolutely fine, and they've got some real attacking quality. That I think, and it's a very valid point. I think Ben White's going to be got at in this game, especially against this opposition, if he does start right back. But just with the way Arsenal started, with the mood around Arsenal in pre-season going into this, and again, like one of the comments you keep hearing about Arsenal this summer is basically Gabriel Jesus. People knew he was good; they didn't know he was this good, because essentially it's almost like he's getting to be the player he is and the kind of the role he wants. Whereas at City, he was always just fitting in and having to prove himself. And I think that could all feed into quite a big effect today and a high-scoring game. But Arsenal to winner.
Hope so. Oh, you're right, Mig. He has looked great.
Come on, Adrian. The unbiased view as ever as Adrian. I like that. So, guys, just for those new and just for Miguel as well, we're just going to take one selection here because we could go around the house. But I think the general theme in terms of bet here for us will be both teams to score at 1.88. I'm happy enough for that. And like I said, insights.matchbook.com, you can find all the recap of those bets. Next game, we move on Saturday evening, and we have a pretty decent one, I would suggest, at Goodison Park. Frank Lampard goes up against his old side. It's Everton and Chelsea at 6.0. You can back Everton. Chelsea at 1.67. The draw available at 4.1. Everton getting 3/4 of a goal start at 2.08. 2.5 is the total. Shade towards the under. Mark, I'll start with you here for this one. Look, I think we've been enamored with Chelsea in the past. We've made plenty of money off them. I don't know if this is going to be that kind of season. However, they surely have enough here for Everton, right?
You'd think so. I mean, Everton have been a bit of a rabble in pre-season, really, and Lampard's already been trying to pass the buck elsewhere. So I can see why people think they're a good bet for relegation with Richarlison leaving. But I think what's probably not talked about enough is how many key players are missing for Everton at key moments last season. Calvert-Lewin and Yerry Mina in particular, but Calvert-Lewin's picked up an injury, it sounds like, so he'll be missing this weekend, which is a big blow. Seamus Coleman also out as well. So I guess from the positives from Everton perspective, they did build up a bit of a siege mentality at Goodison in the final few months, and supporters went above and beyond to try and create a bit of an atmosphere and support the team regardless of what was going on. And it tended to work. They won 13 points from their last 6 home games, which kept them up. And, they did topple Chelsea last season. They did beat Arsenal. They beat United here as well. And they held Man City. So, we talk about Selhurst Park being a difficult place to go. Well, Goodison can be too if those fans get behind their team. So I don't see this as being a definitive Chelsea win. They've not had the most seamless of summers. I know Koulibaly and Sterling are really nice additions, but to me, they're still missing a standout striker or a player who can guarantee goals to turn those 11 draws last season into victories. And defensively too, they've lost a few players. So to me, at the minute, Chelsea look like a team without a major long-term plan behind the scenes. So interested to see where they go. They were the same price here at Goodison last season when losing 1-0, dominated the ball, but struggled against the intensity of Everton and lost that time. So I think Lampard will probably try and revisit that and try and ask his players to produce the same levels of intensity and game plan to try and get the better of Chelsea. So, yeah, I've no great desire to back Everton. I would be with Chelsea, but I think it's actually quite a tricky betting heat. So if I had to, and it's not a game I'm going to have a major view on this weekend, I'd back Chelsea to win, but also include under 4.5 goals. Only 3 of Tuchel's 28 away Premier League games with Chelsea have featured 5 or more goals. And I think if you look at Everton's matches, particularly at Goodison under Lampard, when survival was still to be secured, they were pretty tight games and pretty sort of backs against the wall kind of jobs from Everton. So yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised if they kept this reasonably competitive, but ended up on the wrong side of the result.
Miguel, before we talk about a specific bet, Miguel, I want to get your take on what Chelsea's summer has been like. And I kind of get the sense that Tuchel held it together very well in the whole Abramovich saga last year, but there's signs of cracks there, isn't there? Like Mark said it there. I mean, the lack of forward options, even bringing in Sterling, it's quite evident right now. Yeah,
Tuchel's demanding. There's been elements of the summer 2015, which obviously just with the kind of uncertainty with comments from the manager that obviously ended in such disaster for Jose Mourinho. That said, I don't think it's that. Partly because also there's an irony to Tuchel's complaints, given that this is actually the first summer, naturally with the takeover having taken place in late May, but the first summer of a new approach at Chelsea where the manager is central now to any transfer plans. And one of the kind of aims has been, in a break from the old era, that the manager won't have any players imposed on him that he absolutely doesn't want. One of them so far, of course, being Cristiano Ronaldo. But I suppose Tuchel's the manager, and he obviously wants immediate response. He wants results. He wants exactly the player he wants. Whereas on the other side, there's a bit more, I think, there's been a little bit of a realism about Chelsea summer in the sense that the takeover happened so late that there's been an acceptance. This could be a difficult summer. They don't have any sort of football structure in place. Tuchel is essentially the highest employed member of football intelligence in the club. I mean, that's been seen in how Todd Bowley has taken such a central role in negotiations, something he obviously doesn't want to do even in the medium term. It's just been a compromise this summer. That said, I mean, given that situation, I think they've probably actually done okay in transfers because Sterling and Koulibaly alone are big signings. But obviously, it doesn't fill out that squad, and there's still gaps in the squad. They've still got a lot of business they could do, including Fofana, Cucurella, and possibly De Jong. But I think there's enough uncertainty there, which is it's made me doubt whether they can finish top 4. And as regards this game, even though I think Chelsea will push top 4, although not necessarily finish there, and Everton will probably go down, I think this could be one of those opening day games that just goes against trends in that way, goes against kind of general feeling, because I think Everton will probably have enough, even how bad their pre-season has been. The last memory from Goodison Park was the way they stayed up. I think there'll be enough good feeling about that. Lampard will want to dig in. They'll get to defend in this game, which does suit Lampard better, which is why I've gone for a draw.
Draw available at 4.1, just over 3-1. Adrian, what are you thinking of this one?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I could probably sit in between. I could see a draw. I have actually got Chelsea and over 1.5 goals down, but listening to Mark's case for under 4.5, I'd probably switch bets, to be perfectly honest. I just can't see Everton being good enough this season, and I can't get, because I watched the entire friendly against Arsenal. I know it's only a friendly, I know it's in America, but they were all over the shop. Absolutely, and they'll be in much better shape. I'm sure they will. for this game. And they do have a great record against Chelsea, by the way. They've won the last 4. So, the Chelsea hate going to Goodison Park, but I just can't see them. I can't see them getting 5 in a row. I would have to back Chelsea here on quality alone. But yeah, I'm gonna steal Mark's bet and go under 4.5.
That's all right, mate. We'll take that as a tentative selection. This is probably one of these games as well that, it's early in the season. You don't have to have a bet on every single game. This is probably one to best avoid, but we are covering it because it is a TV game, and we do know that some people are probably looking for an interest. So Chelsea and under 4.5 is the play at 1.92. Wouldn't put anyone off the draw there of it as available at 4.1 as Miguel recommended. On to Sunday, Miguel, I'll start with you for this one, but let's take a look at betting first of all. At Old Trafford, as Manchester United play host to perennial away team Warriors, Brighton. United at 1.63. That is short. 6.6 you can back Brighton. The draw available at 4.2. Brighton available +1 at 1.84. That has been trimmed in. It was 1.9 plus yesterday. 2.5 is the total, and the under shaded at 10 to 11 with 0.91. Miguel, on this podcast for the last couple of seasons, we have been very much anti-Manchester United in these kind of spots. And we have made it pay in a big way. The guys have saw through the Solskjaer era and the Mourinho era before that. What do you make of this one, though? And what do you make of United's kind of activity during the summer? And it does tell a lot that even we were mentioning top 4, top 6 and title race earlier, we didn't even mention them. That's a sign of the times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have been in agreement with them on Solskjaer and Mourinho. One thing about Ten Hag is that I do think there's an immediate improvement in everything, because basically for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, he is a coach on the upward curve of his career. He's also at the forefront of the modern game. So that marks a kind of a difference from every manager they've had before, the sort of manager they should be employing. I think that alone will bring an improvement. That said, this game is almost an immediate acid test for that improvement, because Brighton last season in May, the away game, was the, I suppose, maybe the nadir of Manchester United's modern history. A 4-0 defeat, which kind of brought everything bad about the club crashing down. But from what you hear there as well, there's an immediate kind of, United want to rectify that, the players. There's been a good mood around the camp. They really like Ten Hag's coaching. I think that's almost been illustrated by the fact there has been no negative leaks, which is unusual for the recent history of that club. And again, it's a case. I mean, it's always why the opening day can be kind of. I think it will always provide not necessarily surprises, but results almost kind of stand on their own, separate from the season. And there've been so many actually examples from previous. I mean, Blackpool won 4-0 in the opening day of a season. They got relegated. Manchester United won a famous game when Michael Knighton tried to buy them before, beat Arsenal when Arsenal were champions, and it ended up being a miserable season, albeit ending with the FA Cup.
You're going back here, mate. That's
I know. Well, more was the example about opening days, and while I think I don't think United's progress will be sufficient to get them top 4. I do think there will be improvements, but I think this could be one of those games where, because of everything around it, they'll come out flying, they'll get a win, they'll have everyone talking about, United are back, top 4, but that could just peter out in the medium term. But they will start well.
Mark, Brighton are tough cookies, though, away from home. They kind of love this kind of spot as well, don't they?
They do, yeah. Curiously, they've been really decent on the road, and I think it's something Adrian picked up on the back end of last season, particularly when they went to Arsenal. And you compare their records at the Amex to when they're playing away. They only lost 4 times on their travels last season. They held Liverpool away, held Chelsea away, won at Arsenal and Spurs. They did lose at United. They went off 4-1 that day, which kind of shows how well rated they were back then and how poor United were. So to go from sort of 4-1, which is 5.0 to 6.6, that's quite a leap, really. You're sort of suggesting United are going to show something significantly better, and possibly Brighton to show a drop-off. And I guess from a Brighton perspective, if you've lost Basuma, which is a big blow, Cucurella probably unlikely to play considering the transfer speculation. But I don't know too much about the young signings from Denmark and Paraguay, so I can't really comment there. So, but Brighton are a very smart club run by very smart people. So I'd be confident that they know exactly what they're doing and what direction they're heading in. And to me, this just looks like a really difficult game for Ten Hag to open his career with. got a huge task to overhaul and transform United. There's plenty of players of ability and experience within the squad, which I'm sure can make an immediate impact. But he wants to play a style of possession-based football, which I think can leave teams quite vulnerable to the defensive transitions. And I don't think he's got the central midfielders right now that can currently get the best out of the team and get the best out of those individual players. So I think Brighton began last season superbly well, 4 wins from 5, lost 2 times in their first 11 games. And actually, if you take out a 6-game losing streak in mid-February to mid-March, Brighton only lost 5 of their other 32 Premier League games, which is exceptional, really, really strong. So they're more than capable of kind of keeping things close and competitive. And that's why I think Brighton +1 would be my favoured bet, even though it's been chipped in from 1.92 to 1.84 in the last 24 hours. You basically need United to win by 2 or more goals to see the bet lose. So that's where I'd be heading.
Yeah, it's been chipped in because Adrian Clarke is hammering away at it, Adrian. You're fancy Brighton there. But Adrian, quickly on United summer, I mean, look, the guys are touching it there. Central midfield again, like, you know, look, for all they say about Matic, look, he hasn't been the best last couple of years. They didn't replace anyone there. They've got no real box-to-box midfielder, and they're still lacking a few there, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like Christian Eriksen's addition. I think that applies a bit of pressure to Bruno Fernandes, who underperformed a bit last season, and he'll improve them on set pieces. I mean, I don't know how they'll both fit into the same team. We'll have to wait and see on that. Yeah. You know, they've lost. I mean, Pogba never really played anyway, so his departure shouldn't be seen as too big a deal. But you know, Ronaldo, there is this doubt over Ronaldo, quite a big doubt. It's causing issues behind the scenes. How's that going to affect the players? There are a lot of guys like Rashford and Martial and Sancho who have been tipped up to thrive this season and to shine, and I hope they do. I really do, but it's an unknown, isn't it? At the moment, we just don't know. We need to see it with our own eyes over a sample size of half a dozen games at least to know whether these guys are good enough to take Manchester United forward. So yeah, I couldn't get on side with United here. Brighton's record, as Mark was saying, very good against the top boys away from home. United are usually strong starters, though, aren't they? I remember a lot of thumping opening day wins for them in recent seasons. But I would personally follow Mark in on Brighton +1 because they weren't beaten by 2 goals on the road very often last season. It happened 3 times in total, and I think Liverpool and Manchester United were the teams that did that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to go with the majority here, Miguel. Brighton +1 at 1.84. And when United win 3 or 4-0, Miguel, you can just say it.
I wouldn't go that high given Brighton. But I just think that there'll be that kind of air around Old Trafford, which, as Adrian alluded to there, has been deceptive in the past. But yeah, I think that kind of day.
All right, last for main slate, we switch sides of Manchester as City head to East London to take on West Ham. Current betting, as you have it at matchbook.com. The time of recording, 9.8. You can back the Hammers. Manchester City at 1.39. Who is scaled there? 9.8. Who thinks that's a value bet? West Ham getting a goal and a half at 1.9, and 3 is the total. Adrian, kick us off here. What do you think in this one?
Well, it does a big old meaty price, doesn't it, on West Ham? I mean, Mark will have a better idea on historical prices than me, but it looks you know, I think there are a few Hammers fans that might have a quid or two on that one. I would side with City, clearly. I know they weren't at their best in the Community Shield, but it's a different kettle of fish. I think, you know, the Premier League opener, they'll be tuned up for it, I'm sure. Haaland, who knows? But, you know, I'm a big fan, as we've outlined. I think he did score a hat-trick on his Bundesliga debut and in the Champions League. So it would not surprise me if he rattled a few in at the London Stadium. City have a good record, actually, against West Ham. There's this sort of perception that West Ham are a bogey team for City because I think they knocked them out of the Carabao Cup. And obviously last season, they ran them close. They didn't get any wins. I think they're unbeaten, City, in 13 against West Ham United in the Premier League. So it's a match that they usually prevail in. And I think they will be fully focused. Jack Grealish, by the way, keep your eye on him. Last 3 times he's rocked up at the London Stadium, he scored. All of them good goals as well. And 2 of those were in a Villa shirt during the pandemic. But last season he scored a nice volley there. So he could be a starter. He could link up well, I think, with Erling Haaland moving forward. So, yeah, look, nothing controversial here. I think West Ham are a solid team. But City are a level above, and I would expect them to win the game. So yeah, to get the right price, I'd go City and under 4.5, just because Moyes will have his team very well organised, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's 1.81, and of course a lot more palatable than the match odds currently at 1.34. Mark, well, you're not expecting West Ham to win here. You do think that they can keep it relatively close, and you fancy them plus a goal and a half?
Yeah, this for me is probably one just to sit back and enjoy. I think it's got the makings of being a really fun game, but I just thought West Ham plus a goal and a half was reasonable enough, really. I think if there's an opportunity to oppose City, it tends to be early on in the season. I'm not expecting this to be a cakewalk, and I think last season City were beaten at home. They played Spurs, didn't they? They were beaten by Spurs on the opening day. The season before, match day 2, they lost 5-2 at Leicester, and in fact, in 4 of the last 5 seasons, they've won the title. But in all 5 of those seasons, they've dropped points at least once in their opening 3 games. So I do think there's an opportunity to catch them cold. I know they've not had a major tournament summer, so they should be better prepared this time around. But just including in Haaland into that team, possibly adapting and suiting a system, it might take time really. And I think West Ham are more than capable of keeping this game competitive. The last 3 games at the London Stadium, they've avoided defeat against City. I know that includes the cup match as well. But the last 5 head-to-heads, City haven't won by 2 or more goals. Last season, West Ham turned over Liverpool, Chelsea and Tottenham at home. They lost by 1-goal margins against Arsenal and Man United. Away from home, West Ham lost by a solitary goal at the Etihad, a solitary goal at Anfield, Stamford Bridge and Old Trafford. And I just think under David Moyes, West Ham aren't a team that tends to suffer too many hidings. I think they're consistent in what they do. They've got the tools to unsettle teams with that sort of forward line of midfield that will battle and destroy and can play a bit too. Plenty of energy about them too. So City away since 2017 at top half finishers have won by 2 or more goals in 38% of their games, which is still a very, very strong feat. But it suggests that the 2.04 on City minus 1.5 is a little bit short really. And if you look at West Ham over the last 2 campaigns when they finished in the top 7, they've been beaten by 2 or more goals just 3 times at home in that sequence. So I just playing the numbers really, and I think West Ham are more than capable of being competitive.
Miguel, settle this one for me. Comfortably City, or will West Ham make it Sunday competitive here?
Well, I'm going to the game, so I hope this isn't the case, unless I put money on. But I actually think this could be a 0-0 draw. I think West Ham will dig in. I think, for Everton, Mark mentioned there, and I was touching on earlier with Haaland. I think it might be a bit of a slow start to the season for City. Not that it'll necessarily derail the title, I have them as my eventual winners, but I think it just could be, and this is a difficult one to start with. And again, it's another case where what West Ham need to do is obvious. They'll be digging in. The game plan is clear. So, I'm going for that. Hello.
Hey, mate, look, it's 20-1. So if you're going there, you might as well have that 10 quid on it. Pay for a few beers out.
Yeah.
Sounds like the handicap wins this one. Yeah. I think Mig's going to get.
You happy with that, AC, yeah?
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, these two are definitely backing West Ham to make it close, aren't they? So we should probably go with that.
All right, 1.9 you can back West Ham plus 1.5. Let's do a very quick recap before we get to the latter stages, EFL in Europe. So we have Palace and Arsenal, both teams score at 1.88. Chelsea to win and under 4.5 goals, which is available at 1.92. Brighton plus a goal, which again, even if Brighton lose by 1 goal, you get your money back. That's a 1.84. And we just touched on there, West Ham plus 1.5. AC, I know you're caught for time a bit this morning, but let's go to your championship selection here. Burnley. Comfortable win. Well, not a comfortable win, but a decent win. 1-0 win away at Huddersfield last week. And you fancy them to beat Luton, who were disappointing at home to Birmingham, I would suggest.
Yeah, look, it's a minefield. I was looking through all the EFL fixtures and I had 1 or 2 in mind. I kept changing my mind and I was looking at things. It's so difficult to tell, isn't it, early on in the season, across any of the divisions. So we're all taking a little bit of a punt. But Burnley certainly passed the eye test, didn't they, on that season opener at Huddersfield. Very impressive football, created some good chances. Vincent Kompany and Craig Bellamy, who shouldn't get ignored here, have clearly done a lot of good work on the training ground. So, yeah, they look in good nick. And I think Turf Moor will be quite buoyant. The fans used to a certain style of football. They're going to welcome Kompany, aren't they? They're going to give him a rousing reception. And I think they're going to be behind the style of play as well. So it's going to be a tough game for Luton, who were a bit flat against Birmingham on the opening day. And I looked at Luton's record last season, and all of their best results really came at Kenilworth Road, on the road, away to the top 7. And I think we'd have Burnley in our top 7 this season. They lost 5 and drew 1 on the road, and they scored just twice, Luton, away to the best teams in the Championship. So I know that's last season and not this, but you know, if that pattern continues, I think they'll find it tough going and maybe lose a game narrowly here at Burnley. So yeah, Burnley are backable. Basically, that's why I stuck them down here. Home to Luton, first game in the Championship for a few years. I think 1.8 is an okay price there.
Very quickly, yes or no answer, and it's good to ask this in the first week of August. Burnley go back up, yes or no?
No.
Okay. Sorry,
no.
Very convincing.
They might, but that wasn't an option. So I'm gonna. There's absolutely not a cast iron yes for me. Yeah. So I'll have to say no, but they might.
I'd agree with Adrian. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Good to know. Mark, the Christophe Galtier regime begins in Paris. You fancy them to win by 2 goals or more, says -1.5 against Clermont. Clermont started last season well, but this is a tough one for them to start with.
Yeah, I liked PSG -1.5. It's long gone, unfortunately. It was 1.8 within 24 hours. It's 1.66. So we're going to have to take a slightly higher handicap price of -1 3/4, but still pays out at least a half stakes if PSG win by 2 or more. They looked really good in the Trophy des Champions last weekend in Israel, where they beat Nantes under Galtier. He adopted a bit of a 3-4-3, normally quite a disciplined head coach and gives little away, but what was most impressive was Messi and Neymar were absolutely superb from the first whistle, really. Both look hungry, fit, fresh and ready to go. And you can't have said that too often in the last few years where they've had really sort of busy summers. So that's really encouraging. They now get Kylian Mbappe back from suspension as well. So all 3 of the superstars are available. And yeah, I just think they're going to be more of a force, really. They're playing a Clermont team they absolutely hosed up last year against 4-0 and 6-1. Their record against teams in 10th and below last year, despite it being a miserable overall campaign, 20 wins, 2 draws, 0 defeats, 15 of those 20 wins by 2 goals or more. And what makes this even more appealing is the Clermont team has just been completely sort of disrupted over the summer. Could be a really difficult year for them. 4 teams go down in France this year. They've sold 5 of their starting 11, including Bio, their central striker and top goal scorer, who is hugely influential. He's gone. Both fullbacks have gone. Central back and central midfield have also gone. So essentially the spine has been ripped up, and this is a Clermont team who have lost 7 of 9 at home to the top 9 last season. Very tough opening spell against a PSG team who you expect to win it quite comfortably again this year.
Yeah, it's 1.73, which is 8 to 11 in fractional terms, and that is dipping. So I would suggest getting it as quick as you can. Opening weekend in the Bundesliga, Miguel Delaney, Edin Terzic is back at Dortmund, but you fancy Leverkusen to get a win in the Signal?
Yeah. Just with the way last season went, with some of the vibe. I mean, Dortmund. It's one of those cases where I don't have any doubt Dortmund will kind of restore themselves throughout this season. But again, it's one of those cases of momentum or kind of mood going into the opening day, and I fancy Leverkusen. I was looking at that all week, and yeah.
You're getting a better price there. They're 3.2.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah, and I know Mark and his own private channel has tipped them to be top 4, Mark, right? Did I read that right? Or
Yeah. I fancy Leverkusen. I think the top 4 are probably going to be the same top 4 in Germany again this time around, because I think Leverkusen have strengthened. Have obviously got the Champions League to deal with this time around as well. But you look at the sort of challenges, it's probably slightly weaker than last season. Dortmund have signed pretty smartly defensively, but losing Haaland is a huge blow, obviously. So this is a bit of a banana skin for Dortmund early doors.
They've lost Haller, obviously, as well for the next couple of weeks and months. Adrian, I know you're almost out of time here, but give me your best bet, mate. Liverpool and over 2.5 away Fulham.
Yeah, I'm working on this game for TalkSport International, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm expecting a bit of a battering, to be honest, of Fulham. I don't know, it just sort of screams away win with plenty of goals. Liverpool were mustard, weren't they, last season, away to the weaker sides in the Premier League. 8 of the 10 away games that they won against bottom half sides, they were over 2.5 goals landed. So yeah, Fulham will score goals. They'll entertain at times. They'll probably be better defensively this time than they were before. But yeah, I think they're going to score a few and let in plenty for them this season. So yeah, for me, Liverpool to win and over 2.5 goals at 1.8 as it says on the screen.
Evening, AC. I'm unmuted now. Apologies, AC. Head for it, mate. I know you've got to be done by 10 too, so we'll chat to you next week. And Mark, you can pick it up there. Liverpool -1.5, similar team, 1.88.
Yeah, I didn't know Adrian had picked out this game as well, so that's quite encouraging. But to me, it's a match between a team that's kind of already ready for the Premier League and one which is still sort of scratching around to try and get players in. So Liverpool -1.5, 1.88 really appeals to me. They won 13 of 16 away games when you exclude the top 3 last season. They covered this line in 4 or 5 trips to the bottom 5. In those 5 games, they scored 16 goals. Across the whole campaign, they averaged 2.37 goals per game away from home. I thought they looked pretty decent in the Community Shield. It's not that you can read too much into that, but you compare and contrast it with Fulham. In their last pre-season game against Villarreal, Marco Silva was really disgruntled post-match. He said his team just are not ready for the start of the Premier League. They've got 3 senior outfield players on the bench. He's kind of jettisoned some more experienced players who he doesn't want in the squad. So he's kind of made this issue himself, really. But he said himself, nobody can compete with just 16 senior players, including just 2 centre-backs, one of which is Tim Ream, who just isn't Premier League class, really. So, yeah, I think Fulham are in for a difficult season. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult start, and it kind of just has echoes of last season when Liverpool went to Norwich and hacked up 3-0 on the opening weekend. So something similar wouldn't be too surprising.
Yeah, Miguel, Fulham may not be ready for the start of new season. You fancy the Bournemouth won't be either. And your best bet this week, you're swinging for the fences, 6.8. You can back Villa straight up at 2.08, but you just think there's going to be goals here anyway. You're on mute, mate, if you can hear us. There you go. That's all right. That's all right. We're 56 minutes in. You're doing well.
I must say, I mean, just despite not having too much confidence in Villa that season, the way they kind of stagnated a bit towards the end of last year. But I think with mid-table teams like that, there kind of be a tendency going in kind of in those sort of spells. I think there's sharpness about them, and that contrasts with how Bournemouth's pre-season has basically been. I think we talked to people around the game. It sounds like it's been the worst of the entire Premier League, which is saying something given the kind of attention elsewhere. But because they're Bournemouth, it hasn't got the same headlines. I think they're going in with barely a defence. And I think they could be very, very, very vulnerable, which is why, I think this could be one of those opening games, just set the tone for the season. And there's something else to talk about, that we could be talking about under 15 points, under 20 points for Bournemouth this season.
Love it. And you don't forget about the 20-1 nil-all draw at Upton, or East London.
I know you.
You're not holding back here. I love this. This could either go really well or really badly.
Yeah.
For those who are kind of probably just joining us for the first time this year, while we give selections in the other games, we keep the best bets as our official record. And there was 64 best bets amongst Mark and Adrian last season, and it was a 9% ROI. Some good weeks, some bad weeks. So yeah, if you get that up, Adrian, or sorry, Miguel, we're going to be done for the season. It'll be great. All right, Miguel, good to have you on board. You'll be back the next couple of weeks as well. Solid performance, Mark. Appreciate it. For us watching or listening today, thank you for subscribing to the Matchbook Betting Podcast. If you're listening to us, please leave us a preferential review if you're enjoying the content, or if you're over on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and don't forget, if you want a recap of all of these bets, you want to follow the other guys' selections, insights.matchbook.com, or search for Matchbook Insights on your Google search. We'll be back the usual time, Thursday at 1 o'clock going forward. This is a Wednesday recording. But until then, goodbye for now, and best of luck with your opening weekend bets.